how to conduct a quality review. In this video, we will walk through how to conduct a quality review. The major components to doing a thorough quality review include checking for accuracy, thinking critically about the content and outcome of the return, and handling all finishing steps to ensure the return is successfully submitted to the IRS. Our goal for quality review is to ensure 1, the return is correct, 2, the client's questions were answered and any doubts resolved to the best of our abilities, and 3, that any relevant feedback is relayed to the tax preparer. The steps we cover today are summarized in our quality review tip sheet located on CTC resources and available in print at all tax sites. Once you've assigned yourself to a quality review on the QR sign-up sheet, you'll locate the tax prep station and introduce yourself to the taxpayer. Next, locate the return in the Ready for Review section of TaxSlayer. If the preparer closed out the return correctly, it should appear. If it doesn't, you can find the return by looking up the primary taxpayer using the client search feature. Before beginning the quality review, ask to see the taxpayer's photo ID to confirm identity once more. Don't use our photocopy. Take a look at the documents and review the intake sheet. Take this time to orient yourself to the case. Make sure the intake sheet is completely filled out, including any shaded areas, and change any answers left as unsure to yes or no. Hey Mario, I see there's a couple questions here that have not been answered, so I'm just going to clarify some of that, okay?
Okay.
So for your son, did he earn or receive any money last year?
No.
No? Okay. And did you provide over 50% of his support?
I provided 100%.
100%, okay. And did you pay more than half the cost of keeping up the home, like rent, utilities, food, etc.?
I paid all the bills.
All your bills, okay. And can anyone else claim him?
No, it's just me.
No? Okay. Cool, thank you. In conducting your quality review, one method is to enter into each section of the return as the tax preparer did to see everything as the tax preparer entered it. Another option is to use a quality review print set to conduct the review. There isn't one right way. The most important thing is to make sure you have access to and are checking all relevant details on the return. Throughout the process, continue asking questions of the client to clarify all information. Whether you go section by section or use the print set for reference, check the following information. In the basic information section of the return, verify filing status. Then check the spelling of all names, check all social security numbers and ITINs, and check all dates of birth for everyone on the return. Also verify the client's phone number and address. An incorrect or misspelled address can result in the client not receiving their refund. In the federal section of the return, verify that every single income document has been entered in the system. Check that this list of documents is also consistent with the income section of the intake sheet. For each document, check that each individual character in the EIN and any verification code was entered correctly. For example, let's say you were reviewing Mario's return. Mario's intake sheet notated he had self-employment income. While you were getting acquainted with his case, you learned his self-employment income comes from him working as a Lyft driver, and he has a Form 1099 miscellaneous. As a quality reviewer, your responsibility is to verify that the information on the Form 1099 miscellaneous was entered, that the information on the form was entered correctly, such as the EIN, and even more importantly, that the expenses Mario filled out on the self-employed worksheet at intake are qualified and reflected on the Schedule C. Okay, so we're reviewing your self-employed expenses sheet here, and I noticed that you don't have any expenses for your phone, but I mean, using your phone for Lyft is required, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So what percentage of your phone usage for the time that you were driving with Lyft do you think was dedicated to Lyft?
About 20%.
20%, okay. And how much is your phone bill each month?
$75.
$75, okay. So what we'll do is we'll take 20% of that $75 per month, which is $15, and we'll multiply that by the 6 months you were driving with Lyft. So that'll give us a deduction of $90, and I'll add that to your Schedule C.
Okay.
Okay. Next, you will need to verify that all deductions and adjustments are present on the return. Think of this section as, how can the taxpayer's tax bill be reduced? Therefore, determine that all qualified deductions and adjustments have been entered. This includes referring to all applicable documents to check that EINs have been entered correctly. You may need to refer to the client's intake sheet, as some adjustments, such as teacher expenses, may not have applicable documents. For example, Maurice has a child who is in college. Maurice's child received a Form 1098-T. As a quality reviewer, you need to verify that the information in Form 1098-T was entered correctly. If Maurice receives an education credit, you should review the account summary and education credit worksheet calculations to verify that the qualified expenses and potential taxable scholarship income amounts are correct. In the health insurance section of returns for certain tax years, you will need to verify that health coverage, an exemption, or the shared responsibility payment was applied correctly to each family member. Refer to the client's intake sheet to verify which family members did or did not have health insurance during the tax year. For any individuals who did not have health insurance, check again to see if they qualified for an exemption, and if so, that it has been applied. Refer to CTC resources for more specific information about healthcare coverage guidelines. The last component of reviewing the return before moving on to printing and finishing up the return is thinking critically and reflecting on whether the return does show all credits and taxes applicable to that return and does not show anything that does not belong on the return. For example, when thinking about the 1040, consider, based on the adjusted gross income and family size, should the return include earned income credit? Do they have any dependents that would be eligible for the child tax credit or other dependents credit? If so, does the correct amount show up on the return? If not, why? Did the taxpayer contribute to a retirement account? Considering the AGI, should he or she have received the retirement contribution credit? For years when the shared responsibility payment applies, do the coverage or exemptions or penalty reflect the taxpayer situation for that year? If the taxpayer is reconciling premium tax credits, does the amount the taxpayer is receiving or paying back make sense? There are many tools on CTC resources to help you with these questions. If you're not sure, look it up. We should not assume that the software got the answer correct. Sometimes the software makes mistakes, and sometimes we make mistakes to cause the software to display an incorrect result.
Hey Mario, I noticed here that you're not receiving the child tax credit, but I think that you're eligible for it, so I'm just gonna ask you some clarifying questions, okay?
Okay.
So your son is under 17, right?
Yeah, he's 15.
And he has a social security number, and you had said earlier that you provide all of his support, and he did live with you last year, right?
Correct. Lived with me all year.
All year, okay. Then you should definitely receive the child tax credits. I'll update that in the return.
Now we know the wait for a quality review can be long, and clients and other volunteers can get antsy. Ultimately, it comes down to this. The quality review is our last opportunity to confirm all details are correct and give that one last critical look at the return. Just as you might get a second set of eyes to review an important paper or presentation before turning it in, you want someone with tax experience and fresh eyes to take a look before submitting the return to the IRS. We try to balance efficiency with accuracy as best we can. If you ever feel rushed to finish a review but have a doubt about its accuracy, just imagine it were your return. Would you want the reviewer to take a couple extra minutes to be absolutely sure your return is correct? I know I would. The final steps in doing a quality review are just as important as the first ones, and we want to make sure we finish every return correctly and completely every time. After you've reviewed the outcome of the return with the client and are ready to proceed, we suggest you make any notes on the client's tax return. We want to leave a note if there is anything, whether in content or context, that we would need to know later when looking back at the return. You'll then need to determine if the return can be e-filed or if it must be paper. For help determining whether a return is e-file or paper, check out When Is It a Paper Return on CTC Resources. At this moment, I'll show you how to close an e-file return, and later in the video, a paper return. On the e-file section, under the Return Type section, select the appropriate e-file options on the Federal Return Type drop-down menu. If you select the e-file direct deposit option, open the Taxpayer Bank Account Information section. Review the bank name, routing number, and account number with the client for both checking and savings. Please keep in mind that the checking account number will never be the same as the savings account number. Next, answer the consents to use and disclose tax information for both Foundation Communities and VITA TCE tax prep sites. For information on how to answer these consent forms, check out our video about consents. Before you proceed to the next page, don't forget to select your ID number for the Quality Review ID number question. Click the Save button. On this last screen, called the Submission page, print the return using the FC e-file print set option. As a side note on print sets, you should only ever use one of the two FC print sets. which have every form you will need printed and the right quantity of each form as well. So there's no need to print more than one copy of the print set. Retrieve the printed documents and have the taxpayer sign both copies of Form 8879. Before signing, let the taxpayer know that he or she is responsible for the information on the return. Let the client know about the time frame for receiving their refund or confirm they know how to make a payment if they owe. The FC print set also includes paper copies of the consents, regardless of how the client chooses to answer. No signatures are necessary on these printed documents, and they should be sent with the client for their records. Place in the client envelope a copy of the tax return, including the consent pages and one signed 8879, as well as any remaining tax documents. Next, update the processing envelope. Make sure the Social Security number or ITIN of the primary taxpayer is written correctly on the envelope, and the certification level and other details are correct. Add your volunteer ID as the quality reviewer, and then complete the e-file section on the processing envelope. Make any relevant notes on the envelope. Last, put all necessary documents inside of the processing envelope for our record-keeping purposes. For e-file returns, we must keep 4 things: copies of photo IDs for the primary taxpayer and spouse, copies of the Social Security cards or ITINs for everyone on the return, the signed 8879 e-file authorization form, and copies of all W-2s. For our record-keeping purposes, we keep copies of all W-2s regardless of the withholding amount, and no copies of any other income form. If we validated a Social Security number or ITIN from a return previously e-filed by us and accepted by the IRS, you will see a main info page instead of Social Security or ITIN documents. We can only validate Social Security numbers or ITINs for people appearing on that page, and we will keep that page for our records in place of copies of Social Security cards or ITINs. Keep in mind we still need copies of photo IDs for the primary and secondary taxpayers, regardless of whether they are returning clients. Now, finish closing the return. Click Yes next to the Is Complete box and click the Approved button toward the end of the page. Don't forget to do both of these steps. Then click to save and exit the return. If you need to add a note at this point, locate the return from the main menu using the Client Search option. From there, you can add a note without re-entering the return. At this point, you can let the client go and turn in the processing envelope. Don't forget to log out afterward. Now let's review how to finish up a paper return. The process for a paper return is similar to that of an e-file return, but it has some key differences. On the e-file screen, select the appropriate paper option instead of any of the e-file options mentioned earlier. You will then check bank account information if needed. As with an e-file return, check the information entered for the consents to use and disclose tax information, and select your ID number for the Quality Reviewer ID number question. Continue on to the submission page and print the FC paper print set. Explain to the taxpayer that he or she is ultimately responsible for the information on the return, and ask the taxpayer to sign one Form 1040. To prepare the signed copy to be mailed in by the taxpayer, staple all W-2s, as well as any 1099s showing federal withholding, to the left-hand side of the second page of the 1040 for returns for tax years 2018 and forward, or to the first page of the 1040 for tax years 2017 and prior. Fold up the return and place it in an envelope for the client. The mailing address will vary depending on whether the client is mailing only the tax return or is including a payment with the return, so check CTC Resources to verify the correct mailing address. Make sure the client knows that it is his or her responsibility to mail in the return and that we are not going to submit anything to the IRS. Then place the envelope with the return inside of the client envelope. We recommend writing "copy" at the top of the other printed return. Then place that second copy and all other documents inside the client envelope. Next, update the processing envelope. Make sure the Social Security number or ITIN of the primary taxpayer is written correctly on the envelope, and that the certification level and all other details are correct. Add your volunteer ID as a quality reviewer, and then complete the paper section of the processing envelope. Make sure you write a note indicating why it is a paper return. For a paper return, we usually do not keep anything inside the processing envelope. There are only a few forms we would ever place inside the envelope for a paper return, such as a spousal consent form or a copy of the power of attorney form. To learn more about these situations, watch our video, Preparing Joint Returns for Married Couples, and check out the Special Situations section of CTC resources. Now, finish closing the return. Click Yes next to the Is Complete box, and click the Approved button toward the end of the page. Don't forget to do all of these steps. Then click to save and exit the return. Again, don't forget to add notes if needed. After all this is done, you can let the client go and turn in the processing envelope. But one more thing. Whether the return is e-file or paper, don't forget to provide feedback to the preparer if there were any mistakes or if there's anything you'd like that person to know. This can be in person or via the QR feedback form. This is an important part of our process to ensure we all have the opportunity to learn from our mistakes and become better preparers. In providing feedback now, you're saving yourself time later.
Hey, I noticed you were reviewing the return I prepared. Do you have any notes for me?
Yeah, thanks for checking in. I do have two things to mention. The first thing is that we were able to find a phone bill deduction for him at QR. So, Lyft drivers, they have to use their phone for work, right? So we just took the percentage of his phone bill usage dedicated to Lyft, and that's a deduction on his tax return.
Oh, he didn't mention anything about that.
Well, that happens sometimes. Sometimes people don't know or they forget in the moment. We just have to think about what type of work it is and ask some probing questions to see what type of expenses he might have had. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was the child tax credit. So he was actually eligible for the child tax credit, but it didn't appear on the return. And that's up to $2,000 in a credit. So kind of a big difference and something to consider for the future.
Definitely, that makes a huge difference. Oh, well, thank you so much for your feedback.
Hey, no problem.
Check out our video, How to Close an In-Progress Return, to know how to close a return where a client has left and the return is still in progress.